past 12 months have really flown by for me. Last week marked the 2-year anniversary of passing my CBT. So this was officially my second year being on two wheels, and I upgraded from a 125 to my first ever big bike, my Kawasaki Z400. And forget the year that I spent on a 125, this year is the year that I really learned how to ride. I thought I'd take some time to reflect on some of the lessons that I've learned, some of the regrets that I have, and some of the plans that I have for next year. I did the same thing last year so I can revisit my goals and see how far I got with them. The first thing I learned is that there is so much I still don't know about riding. I wouldn't consider myself to be a bad rider, in fact I'd consider myself to be quite a good rider, but right from the start when I started taking my training for my A2 license, I failed my Mod 2 twice and I finally passed on the third time. And this was my first realisation that there is so much about bikes that I still need to learn, and I wasn't as good as I thought when I was riding around on that 125. It's not a bad thing to recognise your shortcomings, in fact that's a really good thing, but it's just one of those things as you start to learn more about bikes and you start to learn more about riding, you realise there's so much you didn't know, and you just didn't know that before because, well, you hadn't been exposed to that. As soon as I got my A2 license and I got my Z400, I wanted to take some further training and I started up with my local IAM group. And that journey hasn't stopped since. One of my goals for last year was that I wanted to have completed the course by the end of 2022, and I have completed the course, but I haven't taken my test yet. So I don't have the IAM qualification, but I hopefully can get that next year. When I'm a little bit more confident, I'll put in for the test, and hopefully I pass that. And there's a few things that maybe I knew before I started the IAM course, but I've really put into practice and it's just become part of my normal riding. For example, things like lane positioning, counter steering, how to make yourself more visible to the traffic around you. It wasn't new information per se, but I hadn't really practiced it, so spending a year practicing that, doing lots of observed rides and just riding with people who are better than me, that's become second nature. It's just part of my normal riding style now, which is where I wanted to be. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to join the group is because I wanted to meet other riders, but all the riders I'd met so far had been kind of reckless and it just made me really uneasy when I was riding with them. So I wanted to meet some riders who knew how to have fun but safely and legally, and that's exactly what happened. I learned that having fun doesn't mean riding over 100 miles an hour or splitting lanes at 60-70. You don't have to do that. You can still enjoy your bike, you can still enjoy the roads, you can do so quickly and safely, and that's such a good combination. And kind of off the back of that, I learned to be quite picky with who I ride with. I already was quite picky, but I just gave myself permission to do that and realised that that's completely okay. I'm not going to do things that make me uncomfortable or that aren't fun for me. It's just not worth the risk. There's certain groups and people that I used to ride with and I just didn't enjoy the experience. Maybe the group wasn't very experienced or the routes weren't fun or it was just much faster than I wanted it to be or much more reckless. And that's fine, I've just chosen not to ride with those people anymore. They can do what they want to do and that's okay. I used to think at the start of this year when I get a little bit faster or I get a little bit more confident I can go back to riding with these people, but honestly now that I've seen how you can ride safely and progressively, I just don't want to. It's just not my style of riding, I guess. So be picky with who you ride with and give yourself permission to do that. I learned that I'm not ready for a bike upgrade. This kind of goes back to what I said right at the start when I realised that there's just so much that I haven't done on a bike yet or that I'm not very good at, and I'm just not ready for a bigger, heavier, faster and more expensive bike right now, and that's fine. I've kind of pulled a number out of thin air and said that I want to do at least 30,000 miles on this bike before I upgrade it. At my current rate of 5,000 miles a year, that will be about 5 or 6 years, but I reckon I'll do that more like 3 or 4. And I think it would just take that long to be exposed to different roads, really steep downhills, different type manoeuvres. I want to do track days, I want to go touring, I want to do every kind of experience that I can do on this bike before I step that up and get something bigger and faster. My biggest goal right now is to upgrade my slow manoeuvre skills. I want to be able to do full lock U-turns by the end of next year, so let's see how that goes. Part of this realisation happened when I had my accident a couple of months ago. It really knocked the confidence out of me. I couldn't ride for 2 months and that made it even worse, coming back to the bike after such a long break. It did really knock my confidence. Luckily I'm slowly regaining that, but with a bit of added perspective I'm realising that it wouldn't have happened if I was better on this bike, so that's where I want to be, and I am going to get there. And I will be in such a good position when I go to buy my next bike because I learned never to let anyone else tell you what bike to ride. I'm a short rider, for those of you who are new to the channel. I'm 151 centimeters tall with about a 28-inch leg, and I pretty much was told that I had to ride cruisers and I had to buy a cruiser and I wouldn't be able to ride anything taller than that, or at least not until I was more experienced. And it's just not true. There are so many bikes out there. You ride whatever's comfortable for you. Don't let anyone else tell you what bike to ride because they're not the ones that have to live with it. And it's not just true for short people. If you buy a fast bike, people tell you that you're being reckless and to buy a slower bike. If you buy a slow bike, people tell you that you're going to get bored of it. If you buy a sports bike, people tell you that it's a waste. If you buy an adventure bike, they'll tell you that it's big and heavy and expensive and it's just a stupid purchase. Everyone's got an opinion, but the only opinion that matters about your life and your bike is your opinion. So you can take other people's opinion on board if you want to, but ultimately it's your decision. And I learned that when you're buying a bike, sit on as many as you can, maybe even test ride some if you already have your license, and buy the bike that really makes you smile when you walk away from it. More often than not, other people are well-meaning, but what works for them might not work for you. I learned that the jump from 125 to 400 and above is huge. You can't even imagine it when you're riding a 125. This 400 used to scare the crap out of me every time I got on it, and I remember that for the first week or two I thought, I don't know how anyone rides anything faster than this, it's just terrifying. I was speeding so quickly without meaning to, it was just a bit mad. So that jump in power and weight is massive, but you do get used to it really quickly, much more quickly than I thought I would. Within about 3 or 4 weeks, I was pretty comfortable on this bike. Considering how scared I was of it when I first started riding it, I was quite surprised by that. And while I've spent a year riding my Z400 around, I learned that small bikes are really fun, and I feel sorry for people who go straight from 125 to 650 plus, or who skip that 125 range. These small to mid displacement bikes are just so enjoyable, and I really think they're perfect for UK roads. You can open them up, you can go really fast on them, they're so light and flickable. Okay, they might not be able to cruise at high speed for hours and hours with luggage and a pillion and all that kind of thing, and it might not be right for your use case, but I really think for most people this is such a perfect CC range, and if you're considering skipping it or you haven't ridden one of these bikes before, try and get your hands on one. They're a really fun experience and I really recommend it. A lot of people will say you'll get bored of them. I'm nowhere near close to being bored of this bike. It still scares me if I really open it up, but I have a really good grasp on what I can and can't do with it now, and it's just so fun. I learned how to ride longer distances. Even my short rides now are usually not less than about 50 miles. And it's just as I get more confident on the bike and I meet more people in the bike community, there's just so many places that I want to visit, and I have been doing some of those this year, and it's been really enjoyable. I've been happy loading the bike up with luggage, I've been happy riding on unfamiliar routes, I'm just getting a lot better and a lot more confident, and it means that I've been riding longer distances a lot more often. A few things I've learned about long distance travelling is to listen to your body, take regular breaks. If you start feeling fatigued, find somewhere to pull over, get something to eat, things like that. Just really listen to yourself, because that fatigue can really creep up on you, especially on a motorway or something like that. You can really zone out and wake up like 30 miles later and realise that you haven't been paying attention that whole time. So really listen to your body, stay hydrated, stay fed, and you can ride a lot more miles than you would have even attempted a year ago. And finally, I learnt that bad habits creep in if you're not careful, even if you only passed your test or your training fairly recently. For me, my following distance from cars in front has been pretty terrible over the last couple months, and I've had to consciously reset that and really pay attention to what I'm doing, because those bad habits, they just creep up on you, and if you do them and nothing bad happens, it becomes part of your normal riding style, but you can't get away with it forever. So it's very easy to get kind of overconfident and say, well, I only passed my test recently, I'm really well trained, or I'm recently trained. But if your skills aren't improving, then they're getting worse, and those bad habits, they creep in and they creep up on you really, really easily. I did the equivalent of this video last year, and you can go watch that, but in that video I set myself some goals for the year, so let's see how I did. My first one was to complete the IAM course. I've already touched on this, I'm hoping to do my test next year. The second one, I said I wanted to get better at filtering, and I can't remember exactly what I meant by this, but I have a feeling that what I meant is that I wanted to filter faster or more confidently and take tighter gaps and that kind of thing, and I don't do that kind of stuff now, but I have got much more confident with filtering. I do it a lot more often, but I don't necessarily filter any faster than I was before, and I think that's safe, and that's what I'm happy doing. But what's really helped with filtering is my third goal. I said I wanted to get better at commuting. For my first year, I left commuting off of my insurance so I could keep the costs low, and for my second year I added that on. I have commuted to work fairly regularly over the past year, not too many times because I work from home most of the time, but it has helped a lot. I can deal with heavier traffic, I can deal with bad weather, and of course I can crawl my way through London traffic if that's what the day calls for. Some of the goals that I have for next year, I touched on a couple of them. I want to be able to do 4-lock U-turns by the end of next year. That's kind of my slow speed practice goal. And my higher speed practice goal is I want to do at least one track day, maybe more depending on how much I enjoy it. I have already signed up to a track day next year, so that's almost definitely going to happen, and I'm really looking forward to it. The closest thing I've done to a track day so far is the motocross track day, and that's a little bit different, but I have the same issue that I think I'm going to have on a racetrack day, is that I get motion sick and I also don't like the smell of petrol fumes, so after a couple of sessions I felt really ill and I just had to save some energy for the journey home. So we'll see how I do on a racetrack type track day and see how that goes. I want to complete at least a 1 week tour. I did try and do that this year but crashed on day 2 unfortunately, so I actually want to finish one this time. I'm planning a 2-week tour for April. I'm not quite sure if it's going to go ahead, but fingers crossed, I'm really hoping it will because I'm super excited for that. But I at least want to do a 1-week tour, and really I want to do some international or some overseas touring eventually. So this is kind of my build up in confidence until I can get to that. So maybe I'll ride overseas next year, maybe not, but I at least want to do a longer multi-day tour. I want to pass my IAM test, and that means getting back up to test standard. After my accident when I took quite a long break, I don't think my riding has really come back to where it was before, so hopefully I can do that next year. Hopefully early next year I'll have that certificate and I'll have that qualification. That's one of my goals. I don't like setting goals that I can't really quantify or track, but finally I just want to become a better rider, and I think I'll know what that is when it happens. Just more confident, more skilled, more able to ride on different types of road. I think it will just happen with time, miles, experience, and just being exposed to different situations. I can get a little bit impatient, so I've had to kind of rein that in a little bit, but I just want to become a better rider. So that's everything I learned in my second year of riding. Hopefully that little bit of insight was useful to you guys, and I can look back on this video next year and see how far I got with some of those goals. Ride safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.